Hi, welcome to our podcast. Today, we will continue talking a little bit about artificial intelligence, especially addressing the creative industries. When we talk about creative industries, we are referring to a range of economic activities which are concerned with the generation or exploitation of knowledge and information. They may variously also be referred to as a cultural industries, especially in Europe, or the creative economy. And most recently, they have been denominated as the orange economy in Latin America and the Caribbean. Creative economy compromises advertising, architecture, arts, craft, design, fashion, film, music, performing arts, publishing, R&D, and we could keep counting. Some scholarships consider that the education industry, including public and private services, are forming a part of the creative industries. The creative industries have been seen to become increasingly important to economy well-being. Proponents suggesting that human creativity is the ultimate economic resource and that the industry of the 21st century will depend increasingly on the generation of knowledge through creativity and innovation. So after this introduction, Isa, what if you present us our guest today?
Today, I'm really pleased and excited to introduce our guest to continue talking about artificial intelligence and specifically addressing the topic of the creative industries. And to do so, we have today Tom Henkenius. He actually wears a lot of hats, but I want to be really just with him and fair, and I want to read the bio so we have like a better understanding of his background and all the potential that he has. So Tom is an innovative digital content leader and an Emmy Award-winning journalist. He holds the chair of FIDEM's Bachelor of Arts degrees in Beauty and Industry, Digital Marketing, Graphic Design, and Visual Communications. He is also the principal partner at Thunder Communications, a content strategy and production company. His passion is to create solutions to integrate design and technology to achieve businesses' outcomes. He also serves on the board of a couple of startups, including Scholar Rise. And Tom has spent 10 years as a television news journalist after graduating from USC. He has taught media at the University of Nevada in Reno and currently teaches design thinking and digital trends at FIDM, which is actually the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in Los Angeles. He holds a Master of Science from USC, Irvine, and Young Academy and Integrated Design, Business and Technology, and he is, on top of that, top of the cherry, he is also a published cookbook author. So this is really a lot. And then again, I'm really excited to have you here, Tom. And just to start learning a little bit about this, because as we know right now, AI has a lot of buzz and everyone is talking about this, but we want to know your perspective from the creative industries. And can you please tell us a little bit about your experience professionally and personally, and as a content creator, how artificial intelligence has impacted you and impacted your work?
Well, first of all, Javi and Isabel, thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure to speak with you both and get to kind of go into this topic that I think we're all learning about. The most interesting thing I think about AI right now is there is really no expert in the field. We're all figuring out what it is. And I think there's been a lot of discourse around people expressing some sort of expertise, and then it turns so many people off from even diving into AI. And what I think is so exciting about the space, at least for right now, is that it's just so open for any of us to explore. And so, you know, that's kind of the space I like to start in, is you shouldn't be afraid of it. You should be able to go and explore it and get comfortable with it. And that's exactly what I've been doing. So you asked about professional experience with it. I actually I have not used it professionally yet, other than I did have it once help me write a title for the podcast I host, which is Office Hour, which we host for the college. We had it write a title for us one week, just out of curiosity, like to see what it could come up with, and came up with like the best. I can't remember actually what the title was at this point, but of the titles of the podcast that we were bantering around for that particular episode, it was by far and away the best one. So I felt kind of silly. We all felt silly after that. But outside of that, it's really just been an opportunity to play and explore. So I have been a beta tester for both Bard and Firefly. I can explain what both of those are. Bard was Google's AI software, which was released after OpenAI released ChatGPT. And so it very much functions in the same way that ChatGPT was. And if you're not familiar with any of those, ChatGPT is the one that most people to this point have used. You know, you hear people saying, oh, I used, you know, AI to generate this speech I'm giving, or this email I just wrote. They likely used ChatGPT. And so Bard was the competitor, or is the competitor in that space. And then Firefly is really the one that I find the most compelling. And again, I've been a beta tester for Firefly. That's the AI that was released by Adobe. What's super interesting about it is trained on Adobe stock. So for people who aren't familiar with what that might mean, so Adobe owns a lot of images and illustrations. And so those of us who use Photoshop or Illustrator, Premiere editing software, they own all of this content that by subscribing to Adobe, we have access to. And so Adobe owns the copyright to that content and then has trained its AI using only that copyrighted content. And they've added some additional materials into what they've used to train the AI. But all of it is available for use, right? It's all open, what we might call open source. So it's things that are copyrighted, but the copyright might have expired. It's the things that they own specifically the copyright to. And so it's, as Adobe said, it's designed to create images safe for commercial use. And so I went in and started playing with that. The first thing I did, I make a Christmas card for my family every year that I design inside of Illustrator. And so I thought, you know, the most interesting thing to do, and this was probably 2 months ago, so we're talking in like March-ish, and let me see what I could do. So the first thing I asked it to do was to create a Christmas card. I asked it to include a red bow, and I wanted to be able to drop in 5 personal images of my family from the course of the year. And in about 10 seconds, it generated 5 different comps for me to begin tweaking. And it was just so compelling. I ended up spending probably 3 hours playing with those different comps. And then so then it generates, you open it inside of, for me, it was Adobe Illustrator, but you could open it in Photoshop, you can open it in whatever software that you want it in. And then you can begin tweaking it. So, you know, I was celebrating Christmas in March, but it was really, you know, what a gift, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, but it was really just quite a gift to see what we'll be able to do with AI coming soon. Just amazing.
Tom, and let me ask you, because as you say, maybe when ChatGPT and other tools that are used by designers and even regular people, right? For their cards and maybe do, I don't know, animation, representation of photos or people. But it looks like any designer can be replaced now, right? Because everybody is now a designer using these tools. So according to this, how people and companies do you think that could take advantage of AI in order to promote and develop and enhance that kind of creativity skills and capabilities, right? In order to incorporate them into their regular jobs or regular days. And how would be that new skills for the professional person in those areas, right? Because it looks like everybody can do it, but in some way there are people who are specialized and will have a new role in this development, right? So what do you think about it?
Yeah, so it's an excellent question, and I appreciate you asking it. I think the key word in the way you asked it was the word enhance. It's really all designed to enhance the work that we're doing. And as an educator, and I know Isa, you live in the same space I do in education, and we spend a lot of time thinking about this. you do have to, and I guess the quick answer to that is that we don't have anything figured out in education yet. Schools are all treating this differently, even within our own institution. We're really trying to decide how we want to embrace it. I do have a particular point of view, though. So I'm not speaking for FITM, the college I work for. I'm speaking for myself when I say this. I am a firm believer that what this is going to do is allow us to become better editors, so that whatever it is that we're creating, like you said, that could be something that's visual, right? That maybe I would create typically or traditionally inside of Photoshop or Illustrator. But also, if I'm writing an email, if I'm writing a novel, if I'm writing a screenplay, and this is a lot of what the Writers Guild is on strike here in California right now, and a lot of the productions have shut down because they're concerned about this, this very question. To me, what we need to be teaching our students is how to be better editors. And so then those of us who are current practitioners, we also need to be refining our editing skills, because in essence, what these tools are giving us is the ability for the first draft. And that's amazing. How many of us like to drag our feet before we do the first draft of anything, right? We procrastinate, we do all of these things, but now we can get the first draft done. And now comes the actual building and crafting of the final product, whatever that product might be. Again, it's written, it's visual, it's art, it's all of the things. And so I think we really have to focus on teaching our students how to be better editors, again, learning ourselves how to be better editors. But at the end of the day, what an editor has to do is make sure that the communication is clear, right? So that's our role, first point. And then the second thing is we have to make sure that it incorporates all of our thoughts in that elegant way that we want to communicate them, that our analysis, which AI is never going to be able to read either of the three of our brains to know what our analysis might be. It would never be able to say, oh, I'm walking down the street and I see this and I see that, and I put these two ideas together for a brand new idea. AI is never going to do that for an individual person. It will do that, but it's not going to overtake what Tom's brain could create, or what Isabel's brain could create, or Javi's brain could create. So I think then that's where we have to then come into the AI and in the editing process, make sure that we're including our sort of grand ideas and formulations, our critical thinking skills, our creative thinking skills, our divergent thinking skills, hat tip to the podcast. All of those pieces, I think, are really what we'll be doing post the creative, that original creative piece. So I'm not one who believes it's going to take away jobs. We've heard this so many times, oh, it's going to get rid of these jobs. This is going to get rid of that. Every time we say that, we seem to find that there's more jobs and more opportunity to employ people. So that's kind of where my thinking is right now. There's going to be more opportunities for people to be creative in their workspace. I'll go off on one more thing for a second, and I think that sort of proves it. Is there was just an article in Women's Wear Daily, which is an industry magazine for the fashion industry. And in Women's Wear, they were talking about how in a lot of the design houses right now, the new people being promoted to CEO come from the brand side of the business, not from the finance side of the business. So traditionally, your CEO is a financial person who can come in and basically read the finances. Well, now they're realizing that they need the person that needs to be at the helm of the company needs to be a creative. The creative has to understand how to run the business, drive the brand, connect with all the pieces. So I still believe that the power of our future is really in the creatives, and not necessarily, we all need finance people, and they're important and they're not going anywhere. But I think the role of the creative is only going to get that much more important right now.
Absolutely. And I think you touch a really important point about leveraging the creativity of individuals. And as you mentioned, of becoming like editors, it's kind of like saying we're kind of like in a stage that we are cutting the time of producing things. Kind of like before, we were kind of like more taking longer, like the Wallace process of creative problem solving, which has all these research process, incubation, then the illumination, then verification and launching. But now we're kind of like stretching things in a way of saying it. What if you can actually cut that research that takes a lot of time, resources, and human power and allocate it into more the aha moment, which is the illumination process, when you have like these versions that are already like an interesting first draft to start kind of tweaking and giving your portion. I think that that's actually really interesting point, Tom. But moving forward, and even kind of like thinking about what you mentioned about how Adobe has these packages, you know, considering their current database, how will be the implications for copyrights laws? Given the recent advancements, you know, what will be the next stage? And I think that, again, everyone wants to be racing, you know, with different softwares of AI. Do we find that maybe there is going to be a time that they're going to talk among each other? Do they are trying actually to keep things more segregated, and then again having like those kind of databases, and then you try to choose the one that is more comprehensive in a way, kind of like for accessing and having like more data? Or what are your thoughts about this, considering again the copyrights, which I think is like the other issue that we will start kind of raising questions about?
Yeah, I think, you know, I'm just going to be, I'll be humble in my answer. I don't know. It is too broad of a question, I think, for anyone to really have an answer at this point. I think we're in these early days of understanding this technology, and we'll have to be, kind of go about defining it over time. I think, you'll see local legislation, then you'll see national legislation globally. And then we'll probably end up seeing international legislation, the things that, I think of GDPR in Europe that had to do with privacy and the way that it's impacted us in the US, or the CCPA here in California, again, a California privacy law, but that has impacted globally. So you can see where local and then national legislation is going to have international repercussions in this space as well. The place I spend a lot of time thinking about is, because I'm in higher education, what do we do so that we don't have our students plagiarizing? And at least at this point, I think it's really on us to be ethical as individuals. And so we tell our students, I'm comfortable with you submitting assignment that was partially created using AI, but you got to show me what the AI created. And then you also have to show me what you created from that. I have to see your thought process that built on top of it. And so I think for most of us, that's going to be the space we're playing in. I think when you think about the sort of global copyright questions, like what we were talking about before from Adobe, I like what Adobe has done. They own the copyright to everything that has informed the AI. The New York Times had a great piece a couple weeks ago that talked about how the AI learns and how the model has to develop over time. And it's the online version of that piece is phenomenal. If anybody wants to go Google it. It's really a terrific read, and it's designed really well to get you to understand how these processes work. But it's reading and rereading the same content. It's getting content over and over and over, and then as it sort of ingests the content, it gets smarter and is able to predict, because that's all it is a predictive model. Predict what the next word would be, or what the answer to a question would be as it gets more and more sophisticated. So that said, Google, Bard, and Open ChatGPT from OpenAI, both of these are open models, meaning they've been taken from the internet. So the content they're creating is often quite inspired by others. I think maybe that's the best way to put it. Maybe too generous way of putting it. Yeah, I don't know. I think about the Drake song a couple weeks ago. I don't know if you followed that too closely, but a song was released on YouTube that was, a Drake song, but it was not Drake singing. I think it's Drake and The Weeknd. And so all of the platforms took it down, but of course it keeps getting put back up. There was this trend on TikTok a couple weeks ago, famous musicians singing or covering other songs from other musicians. But they didn't sing those songs. Michael Jackson is singing songs that have been released since his death. But that's not Michael. And then I think about, Dolly Parton has openly said that she's created a sort of, I'll call it a library of her sound, and has been specifically working with different organizations to literally, I think the only way I can think of it is, I'm such a visual thinker, is it's like a piano, and each note is a different note of Dolly singing, so that even after she's gone, they will have this very clean way to create more Dolly Parton music. And she's openly said, like, she just wants to keep making money for her family for future generations. So you see artists going different ways on this. There was one artist, I'm trying to remember who it was, who said that she would split the revenues with anybody who made money off of a song they created. So yeah, again, I just go back to, I don't know that there's an answer yet in terms of what all of this means.
Yes, let me just to elaborate in that one, because I know that there is no answer yet there. But also there is different levels about countries. And like if we actually compare, because we're talking in our previous podcast with South America, and what are the industries that right now are putting more effort and pushing, so we would like to hear your thoughts about that. Which are the industries that you think that are really moving this, pushing it forward and are investing in the RA, like the research and development to make this happen? From your perspective? So
I would boil it to two, and this is just, literally off the top of my head thinking this through. I think it's two industries. So it's the search industry, driven by Google, and then Microsoft and their investment in OpenAI. So that's all search related. And then the second would be the creative, and I would put Adobe at the lead of that right now, just because of what Firefly is doing. But I know obviously there's the music on the other side of that too. I thought it was super interesting. When you look at Google's income from the last year of 280 billion in revenue, 162 billion came specifically from search. So when the Bing starts including ChatGPT, Google has to put some R&D into its search, because Google can't afford to lose what is more than half of its revenue source, and lose that market share to Microsoft. So, that to me is like the key at the moment. The stuff that's free, the stuff that people are just playing with, to create a new song or write an email or those sorts of things. I don't know that that's really where the R&D is going at the moment. I'd be curious to hear your all's thoughts.
Of the iceberg. I think that's the tip of the iceberg. There are like something there that is more, and that's more for testing, if I may say. That will be like you're testing and evaluating how the user, with AI is all the machine learning, like all these algorithms are actually, they reinvent and they have the iteration process. They're just learning here and then using the statistics to write the codes and everything.
Yeah, I want to go back to, you said something before about the sort of the speeding up of the process as well. And I would just caution people, because I think one of the things that I'm realizing as I'm sort of working with students and then doing my own research and my own practice in the space is, you said the thing that kind of stuck in my brain was the aha moment. The aha moment is never going to come staring at a screen and reading what the AI tells you to read. The aha moment still comes from being present with your consumer. I have always said in the design process, the most important piece is that human-centered design. It's being with your user, your customer, watching them. There's small nuances of the way somebody plays a guitar, for example, that if you're trying to solve for a guitar problem, like you need to be sitting in the room watching the guitar player. You will never get from AI. And so I think that's where the AI becomes, a speedier, kind of expedient, is not in the research, but in the ability to then converge all of the thinking toward a solution. Putting all of the data points into the AI to then get you closer to a solution. And that gives you more time now to spend with the consumer, really understanding what's going on in their journey, speaking to them, following them through the shopping experience, whatever it is that you're studying. Obviously, I'm getting distracted by shopping and guitars for some reason.
And Tim, in order to keep this podcast in a short period of time, I know that probably we will be talking a lot about this in a passionate topic. But Tom, if you ask me, I would say that I would summarize, but at the same time, there were some like thoughts that keep in my mind all what that you say. That it was really interesting for me. That, for example, that all of us will become more editors, probably, that and we will be supporting and providing information, data, and things like that to this machine learning and this artificial intelligence. So how we could start to develop these skills: first, understanding the technology; second, understanding how can we improve the data, the quality of data, right? And how can we even improve the questions, right? How we can be part of that iterative process to refine the end solution, right? Or the end answer, because probably the first one could be just an approach, and maybe we could help adding value through those questions to edit or refine that process, right? That image, that word, that sentence, that search. So I think that that's where we add value. And something that keeps in my mind too was something that you said about the students, right? The probably all the answer, all the question has already an answer through ChatGPT. So what is that new role, or that new way to teach it? That is, okay, there's the answer. What is the process behind that thoughts, right? It's not the end result that if you get the right answer to the question, is how you come, what is the process behind it? How do you achieve it? What kind of things did you ask? How do you get that answer at the end, right? For example, you have I have to do an essay. Okay, probably ChatGPT would do that essay right now, but how can I improve it, right? That is the kind of maybe skills that we should be trying to develop, right? That how we can make use and not reject that technology. How can we use it in order to create new things, new thoughts, new questions for our society, for our current problems and things like that. Obviously, the locally and global regulation challenges that we will be facing in the next years in these early stages, when we are just starting to understand what it is as a tool and as a potential. The aha moment that you say, as you say, that even when probably we will have a lot of information, tools, and maybe in an instant reactions and answers, at the end, we should be still doing the right questions, right? And something that the AI can do well now is have that sense of common sense, right? So again, there's where we can add value, because at the end, the customer is who will be in the center of everything, right? The customer, it could be a client, it could be a student, a society, I don't know, whatever it is. But at the end, the most important thing is how we keep that in mind, that the important thing is keeping this client at the center of everything, of that thought, or maybe I don't know, optimization and things like that, right? And I think that for me, it was very illustrated and very enlightened as for your experience. So I don't know, Isa, if you want to add something else and close the podcast for our listeners.
So I think at this point, I would like to ask Tom just to, like, if we can recap, and I know it's hard, the topic already is really complex. You know, we've been talking about this one, and I know we were Dungeon and Kruger effect of expertise, you know. if we can recap with 3 sentences or 3 ideas that you may take about what is the current reality and what we can think in the future about AI and the creative industries, what there will be.
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought Javi did a great job of just summarizing it all. You want me to do this again? I think for me, the 3 things I would think about and the things that kind of rotate around in my brain a lot are 1, accessibility. I think a lot of people are afraid to touch or get near it and really like experiment with it. And so I think accessibility is number 1. Get in and play with it. I think number 2 is this just learning to be an editor. I think that the skill all of us need to refine over and over, no matter our age, is really understanding what it means to be an editor and how to refine thoughts. Those of us who've been in design thinking for a long time, we know it as iteration. It's really just that. How do you iterate? And so first iteration is AI, second iteration is you. And so now what is your voice and how do you integrate your voice into whatever the AI has generated? And that's an editing process. And I think maybe the third thing is really to recognize that kind of where do your ethics lie in this as we wait for the regulation to catch up. Are you comfortable listening to a song on YouTube that is going to generate someone else money, but is the voice of an artist you love? Is that okay for you? Okay, fine, great. Are you okay with going and saying, I want a Monet-like picture of my dog? Now, Monet is all in the public domain because it was created so long ago, but I'm trying to think of a more recent artist. I have a Yayoi Kusama on my wall. If you did something in the style of Kusama, is that ethically correct for me? So knowing my limitations, until the regulation keeps up, what is the box I'm comfortable acting in is, I think, probably the third thing. So yeah, it's accessibility, learning to be an editor, and knowing your own personal ethics as you approach it.
Excellent. I think that this is really great way of just kind of like recapping. And I want to thank you, Tom, for your time. I want to thank you for being humble and saying I'm not an expert. As you mentioned, we're all learning. And that's the first step, like recognizing that there is a lot of room. Like I would say, my intake is about learning to ask better questions. And I think that AI is putting us in that task to know how to ask. And this is something that we keep forgetting. And I think that this is like one key step for me. So Howie, go for it. I think that this is like a good moment just to close and talk to all our listeners about the next step.
No, first, Tom, thanks again. Has been a pleasure to meet you, really. And we invite all our listeners to keep first subscribe to the podcast. Second, you can follow us on Twitter, and on all in YouTube, Spotify, Instagram. We will be glad to hear all your comments and feedback. Even if you have new thoughts and ideas about next or further podcast, it will be a pleasure to take note of that. And that's it. We invite you to keep listening us and be present with us. Thank you.